Well, that's not good. Hello and welcome back. Today we're cracking back on with the E-Class. Now, this very shaky radiator, as I showed in the last video, needs to come out. And the biggest problem for the shakiness is this side is broken. It was also missing some mounts which go from the top of it and sits through these holes here to the top in here to keep this all stable and in place. So today I'm going to try and get this radiator out, and I'm going to put the new side plastic in, and hopefully that will solve these radiator problems and make sure everything's nice and tight, nothing's going to come loose, no coolant hoses are going to come undone when it's being driven. And here is the replacement plastic part. By the looks of things, if this mount sits up here like this on that side, there is one main screw hole holding it in right there, and it looks like there's a mounting placement hole there. So to access this one, which is in the back side of the engine, I'm going to need to get off this bottom panel. So currently there's two screws holding it on both sides. Get those out and get this off. And as expected, two different sizes of hardware came out of there. And I'm not sure if either of these are the correct sizing, but this one definitely looks a lot better. This was barely holding on. Taking a look at the underside of the car, we can see here this bracket and this plastic for this side of the radiator, lovely and straight. And down here, we have a little bit of a kink in it. We can see one hose goes into this front radiator from the water pump here, and then one hose at the back goes into the rearward one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain it at its lowest part. That radiator is draining. I know not all the coolant will come out from this side, so I've got to be careful when I pull any other pipes out. There will probably be coolant coming out as well. But this side is ready to lift out. This side is still held in by that screw at the bottom, so that also has to come out. As for the hoses, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 hoses on this side, and I think there are around 4 hoses on this side as well. They are a bit awkward to get to because they're all coming in from this side. The hoses were quite difficult to remove, so I had to call in the expert, and I got relegated to the light holder, which in my opinion is a very important job. The main difficulty was the lack of access, but with prying in the right places you can get the hoses off. It is definitely better to remove the rear fan, which just clips off and it's super easy to get off. There's just one connector. Oh, it's wedging this metal thing again. Who designed this bloody thing? Initially, it was a bit of a struggle getting the radiator out, but once we split the front radiator from the rear radiator and unbolted one of the frame sides, it did come out quite easily. As you can see, the screw that we pulled out of the bottom is definitely not meant to be there, and again, it's another shoddy fix that the previous owners did on this car. Next, we unbolted the old plastic and put the new one on, just to make sure we knew how everything fit. So the plastic bracket hooks in at the top of the radiator, and then it kind of clips down towards the bottom. It's a bit of a funny movement you have to do to get it right. Then the radiator on top just slides into one side of the bracket and then pushes into the other, and you just have to be careful that the clips don't get caught on it. And finally, with the radiator removed, you can see the extent of the damage to that bracket, and this will become more evident once it is removed. But we now have two new, used radiator brackets to replace the bent one there, and because I've got it, I might as well replace the one on the other side as well, just so I know everything is straight. We're suspecting there may be a little bit of a bend in that frame rail, but I'm not too worried because it hasn't affected the steering at all. It still tracks very straight, but I'm sure we'll be able to tell once we get this bracket on, just because these brackets are out of line, and I'm not sure if that was by design or not. So to get these brackets off, there are 3 star bolts over the top, and there's only one way these brackets can go on, so you can't get them mixed up on the sides. While looking for a bit of access to undo the bracket on this side, I found some cut wire ends, and I have absolutely no clue what sensor this goes to, but it should have been wrapped around there so it doesn't dangle around everywhere. So that is another problem for me to sort out, and getting access to this one will be a bit harder just because of all the cooling pipes, because of the water pump being mounted at the front here, but let's crack on with it. Just doing these brackets is quite awkward and very laborious because I had to put the star key in there and spanner it round and round and round to finally undo the bolts. So now I have the bracket out of the car, you can really see how bad it was. Super mangled, it's definitely been hit, and the aluminium is actually sheared right in the middle there. So very good job that I'm replacing it now with a nice new used straight bracket. Let's get that in there. The reason why this bracket on this side was so much further back than this one is because the frame rail has a very slight kink in it around about there. So that just means that this has been pushed slightly this way, and obviously because the bracket's slightly longer, it'll move slightly more in that direction. It's not a massive problem because it is just that front bit there that is kinked, and I'm probably going to leave it how it is purely because I'm not set up to deal with and straighten these parts of the car because they're super thick metal, part of the crash structure, and if I get a mallet on it, I'm sure that'll just make it worse and bend it in a different way. So I'm going to leave it how it is. Now that is the reason why this bottom hose was so tight up to the radiator and so hard to get off, but it is going to have to do. There is no mechanical problem with this, it's just that that is a little bit bent. That is now both the brackets back on the car, and you can see it is already a little bit straighter than it was. So that is definitely an improvement. So now I've just got to get it back plumbed up, the water pump, then we can slide the radiator back in, and hopefully it'll all go back together just like the jigsaw puzzle it is. This heater is definitely not going easily. It's putting up a fire every turn. So I did take off one of the brackets so I could get the main heater in. Then I put the bracket back on, hoping that I could fit this heater in with both of them on, because it slides in that way and then snaps that way into that frame. But for some reason this inlet kept getting in the way and wouldn't go in no matter what angle I had it at. And it doesn't help that I still have the AC condenser in front because the pipe around here is blocking it. So now I'm trying to get the other frame up, which I took off, and get it connected to this one, and then just get this pushed in while still keeping it in this side. And I managed to get this front radio in roughly the right position. So as I said, it slides in this way and sits behind these clips here, and then this side just pushes in, snaps in. There's a few clips that you need to get by inside here. So once that's all on, that's pretty much the hardest job done. With the new radiator frame, the radiator hose would no longer fit onto the pipe, so I had to try and wiggle out a bit so it could just mount onto the pipe. So I got that bent hose straightened out enough for me to slide the mount onto it. So now that's all clipped in. I'm having some trouble with the big hose down here, just not really fitting on to it properly, and the same with this one up here. So what I'm going to try is a bit of heat. This 20-year-old hairdryer worked a treat. You need to leave it on there for about 30 seconds to a minute, and the plastic expands just enough for it to slide on. So that is both those hoses on now. All the hoses on this side are clipped on. The last one is the one up here. However, this coolant pipe, the clip on the end has snapped, so it can no longer slip onto there. So this pipe also needs to be changed, and we've got a new one of those. Right, that's the radiator back in, but before I build up anything else, I need to make sure that this is watertight and the fan is working. So I'm going to fill up with some coolant, and I am going to let it get up to temperature and hopefully not see any leaks anywhere. If I do see any leaks, I'll turn it off, have to drain the coolant again, and then get it all out. Well, that's not good. So after all of that, putting it in, obviously when I was trying to straighten this out, I actually just pulled out the brazing. So now, this radiator is probably junk. I'll probably get a new one as opposed to repairing this one. But on the bright side, at least it's easier the second time you do it.